Hello, welcome to The BIM Student. I'm your host Chetna Chauhan. In our today's episode, we are taking our conversation about digital twins to the next level. Where last week we talked about the concept, possibilities and challenges that come with the conception of digital twin, today we are going to talk to someone who's currently working on a project to create an actual digital twin. And not just a digital twin of any building or a few blocks of infrastructure, but digital twin of Canada. Did your jaw just drop? Mine did too when I first heard about this project. With all the details and complicated workflows, parameters and backend data that might have to be considered while creating the digital twin of a small building, when I heard about this project, I was both excited and apprehensive. Excited because I could imagine the benefits and possibilities of the outcomes, and apprehensive because of the ambitiousness of the project. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Stephen Fye, professor at Azrieli School of Architecture and Urbanism at Carleton University. He is currently serving as the director of Carleton Immersive Media Studio, a multidisciplinary research unit that addresses theoretical and applied research questions related to integration of digital technologies in the architecture, engineering, construction, and owner-operator industry. Please welcome Stephen Fye. Welcome to my podcast, Stephen. I am so glad you were able to make it. I'm so excited for our upcoming conversation. Thank you so much for making it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Do you first want to get into a brief introduction, background, and digital twin of Canada that we are going to be talking about?
So I am a professor at the School of Architecture, the Azrieli School of Architecture and Urbanism at Carleton. And I have been with the school for about 20 years, I guess. But in 2007, I became the director of a research unit at the School of Architecture called the Carleton Immersive Media Studio. When I took over the lab, we were working with very high resolution architectural graphics. We were working with a company called Alias out of Montreal, and they had developed a software product called Maya. And then in 2009, 2008, somewhere in there, Autodesk bought Alias and they bought Maya. And so the work we were doing with them, with Alias, was actually developing an architectural front end for Maya software. Mm-hmm. So of course, when Autodesk purchased that was the end of that project. So when I took over the lab, building information modeling there was a lot of conversation about it. In the area of rehabilitation and conservation, there was not so much conversation about building information modeling. Mm-hmm. And so we took on the challenge of trying to work with existing softwares, building information modeling softwares, primarily Revit, but not exclusively, and trying to work that into existing workflows for rehabilitation and conservation. Yeah, here we are, 14 years later, and there's still a lot of talk about BIM, but it hasn't exactly lived up to all of its promises. But I don't think it's the fault of the idea. I think it's the problem with the industry.
It's interesting. You're not the first person saying this. Everybody from the engineers and architects and contractors to technology implementers to technology companies, almost everybody says that it's been 15 years, it's been 18 years. The concept was really great. It was there to solve our problems that we were facing. Initially, it looked good, but where we are again, it looks like we are retracting rather than progressing. So you're not the first one, but I'm amazed even the academia is now getting to know that industry is not keeping up to the pace of the concepts that was introduced to help the industry and help us. And that's a conversation for another day, that why and how and what can be done. to improve it. But today we are here to talk about digital twin of Canada. When I heard about it, I was excited. Like even now talking about it, I'm getting goosebumps. Tell me about it. What is this project all about? What are we doing?
Well, it's the culmination of about a decade's worth of work. I mean, part of our work in building information modeling and existing conditions, so again, conservation and rehabilitation, but we became very adept at modeling existing conditions. And back in 2010, we were asked by Sonia Batta, who had purchased a company town from the Batta Shoe Company. Mm-hmm. The town is called Battawa. It's about halfway between Toronto and Ottawa. And she wanted to develop this community into a socially, ecologically responsible community. That was kind of the first wave of smart cities. She asked if we would build a model of this town. It was about 600 hectares. Mm-hmm. And she controlled 7 buildings. So this is back in 2010. We developed that model for her using terrestrial laser scanning as well as existing topographic maps. That project led to a project with the Kitigan-Zibi First Nation, who have a reserve near Maniwaki. And they were looking for an asset management tool. This was in 2012, I believe. We showed them what we'd done for Battawa. And the challenge there was they had 18,000 hectares, including 20 lakes, and a very diverse portfolio of assets, everything from timber and fishing to 27 buildings that the Band Council managed. So we built all of those models based on drawings and scan data, 27 different buildings. And we mapped the terrain of the reserve and then took their existing GIS data mm-hmm. and the new BIM data. And then mm-hmm. we built a dedicated browser that would allow you to search the GIS and BIM and say, where's information on police station? Here in GIS, there in BIM. Because at that time, Esri and Autodesk were not communicating like they are today, where those applications now actually work quite well together. That project led us to a project with the Ontario East Economic Development Council, who mm-hmm. was looking for, again, an asset management model, particularly for the agri-food industry. But they were looking at an area of 45,000 square kilometers. So essentially the area between Montreal and Toronto. We accepted the challenge and we're just putting the final touches on an app that will allow people to search data and display it in 3D, overlay StatsCan data. But you can query, for example, where are milk solids produced? And I'll show you all the solid milk producers in Eastern Ontario. Mm-hmm. And then where are cheese factories located? Where are the major markets? What are the workforces in those markets? All that kind of thing. So we'll be rolling out the beta version of that this summer. So through all of this, I heard of an initiative in the United Kingdom called Digital Build Britain. I started to imagine, in the UK, you don't have to drive very far to be in another town or city. And then I started imagining, and based on our work, which has been largely rural, I started to think about Canada and what would a digital twin of Canada look like? Because there are individual nodes. For example, the Quebec City-Windsor corridor, that's over half of Canada's population. And the next largest corridor is the Edmonton-Calgary corridor. In between those two population nodes, there's a lot of territory.
There is a lot of Canada in between.
There's a lot of Canada in between. So I just found it fascinating to try to imagine how would one represent and how could one engage with all of that Canada. Mm-hmm. So we applied for some funding from New Frontiers in Research Fund, which is a relatively mm-hmm. funding agency. They were looking for high-risk, multidisciplinary projects that put an emphasis on inclusion and diversity mm-hmm. as part of the research team. And we put together a team and we were successful in that funding. So it's 2 years of funding. And the project is entitled Imagining Canada's Digital Twin. So at this point, we're not explicitly proposing a solution. What we're doing is bringing together groups of people to really dream about what this could be. Because I think it has to be more than just technological. It has to be social and cultural as well. But we did put parameters on this initial project to really focus on the architecture, engineering, construction, owner-operator industry.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a focus in this first phase of thinking about really mapping out all of the infrastructure in Canada
Okay.
and how those infrastructures are integrated, again, in all of that space, all of that openness.
Mm-hmm.
So we hope to again have not a prototype at the end of our funding. We have about another year left, but at least a kind of a three-dimensional sketch of just how this thing might work and who might be involved in developing it further.
Okay, so like you said, it's not just the three-dimensional geometric placement of things in the whole digital twin. It's cultural and social and economical and like everything that contributes to what Canada is. It does speak to a lot of people like me who are immigrants, who've made a good living, who've come from countries with, not as much resources as Canada has, and done something good for themselves and their families, and like people who come to Canada for hope, like refugees and people from troubled areas. That is another layer of characteristics that Canada has that is very, very unique to Canada. There are not many countries in the world that have that specific fabric of belongingness that we have here in Canada. But getting back to what we want to talk about today is, where are we at this stage? What have been the outcomes, or what, like you said, the process? But also, where do you think this will go in future? Like you did say that it is going to be, at the end of the project, it will be a 3D fabric of where we are. Not even a fabric, a 3D sketch of it. But where do you think it would go from now, and from where we are, and who are possible people who would benefit from this kind of project?
Through the other projects that I've mentioned, we have worked with a lot of different platforms. And in the Ontario East project, it's the first time we really built our own platform. We've actually, written the code, which is something I promised myself we would never do, but here we are.
Oh, you'll do it again.
Yes, exactly. At this point, we're experimenting with, so first of all, the idea for it is a distributed federated model. People who are invited to participate in it, for instance, an electrical utility, they manage all of their own data.
Mm-hmm.
What the digital twin will allow them to do is to be able to place that data into a form that allows others to view it or to use it,
mm-hmm.
or to integrate with it.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, if the hydro utility, let's call them hydro utility A,
mm-hmm.
will speak to hydro utility B about possibly integrating their
mm-hmm.
system. Hydro utility A contacts hydro utility B and says, we would like to share this data with you. Will you share this data with us? And the two parties agree, and then the data is viewable. How that data is managed at this point is going to be up to hydro utility A and hydro utility B. I think, anyone who works in this industry knows that you cannot force people to adopt standards. You have to gradually convince them that standards are a good thing, and that everyone will benefit from standards.
Oh, well, that's, again, a very Canadian thing. You can really not force people to do anything. You can only convince them.
Exactly. So, we're looking at a couple of possibilities. I think game engines offer a lot of possibility as platforms to bring in very diverse data sets and to share them. So that's one thing that we're actively investigating. At this point, I would say that our three-dimensional sketch of what this thing might be will probably be developed in a game engine.
Oh, that would be great. I would want to see this integration in Pokemon Go. Me and my son, we play it all the time. It's amazing. Every person has their own point of view, and everybody can see their own benefit out of a project like this. What I want to know about is, how much is building information modeling helping you create this data and the models?
Well, even coming up with the idea of a digital twin, I think, being trained as an architect, I don't think I could have come this far in my thinking about it without building information modeling.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that there is, you have architectural geometry, and then that geometry is linked to a database or databases. I still think it's just such a brilliant concept. As we were saying before we went on air, really still very much underutilized.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, the other aspect of the digital twin and where it departs from building information modeling is that there is a continuous feedback between the architectural geometry of the model and something in the physical or the atomic world, the bits versus the atoms. Those are being exchanged, but again, it's through that database or databases where that information is cycling, feeding back and forth between those two entities. That is something that we do have operational right now. We're working on a digital twin of the Carleton campus, and again, it's where we're working out a lot of the little bugs as we go along and thinking about the larger picture. But again, it really is now that exchange of information, whereas prior it was really in BIM, it was really about linking the information to the geometry. Now it's constantly refreshing that information.
I come from like hardcore industry setup, and I see that in the industry, it is changing now, but there has been a lot of focus on geometry and on the physical elements. And not many people do understand that building information modeling, like the eye is the center of BIM. Now I see in a couple of years or maybe like I'm talking to a lot of people now, people have started thinking about the information element of the model more than the model part of it. And I think that, like you said, there are various steps and various layers to this digital twin. What do you think is your immediate concern in, like, this is the first layer that we have to add other than the geometry? We have to add to make this at least something that can be used by somebody else.
Mm-hmm. One thing that continues to surprise me is the reluctance to share data. I just find it dumbfounding. I mean, in the Eastern Ontario project, there is some information that is government information that is delivered to the municipalities. Mm-hmm. The municipalities update it and give it back to the provincial government. Mm-hmm. So we went to the municipalities and we asked for that data. And again, this application is to help them. They said it's not our data, it's the government's data. So we went to the government, and the provincial government said, well, the municipalities have the data, why don't you just ask them? So and I know that for the digital twin, even already as we're reaching out to groups, they immediately believe that you're going to do something clandestine, with their data.
Okay.
So a lot of it is trust building, but I do see that as the major hurdle going forward. So it's not the technology, it's the human beings.
It's the human beings? Oh my God. Yeah, and then you remind me of all those movies that are made in the name of robots taking over the world. I think I'm going to just give us both a little break here from this deep, soulful conversation about digital twins and get to our next section, which is called Impossible Questionnaire. I'm going to ask you two really difficult questions. So the first question is, according to Building Code Act of Ontario, the authority to issue change certificate lies with the
building inspector.
Okay, great. Yeah. The next question is, which of the following cities is located in heating degree day zone of 2? Petawawa, Ottawa, Huntsville, Parry Sound.
Parry Sound.
No, Petawawa. I got you for one question.
You should have got that one, actually.
Okay, so let's move our conversation. This is the last section, and I know we did talk about some of these things earlier, but this is the section where we talk about the rose, the bud, and the thorn. So rose is our achievements or our advantages of today. Bud is basically what we can see in future, the hope for future. And thorn is a challenge or a hurdle. We did briefly talk about it previously, but let's get into more detail about your rose, bud, and thorn about this project.
Okay. Well, I think the rose is just the fact that we can do this. Mm-hmm. I mean, the fact that there is a thing called the internet, I still find it absolutely amazing, like literally amazing, what the internet has enabled. So I feel very, very positive about that.
Mm-hmm.
The bud would be that we can actually build this digital twin as a platform that enables the AECOO, the architecture, engineering, construction, owner operator industry, but also different cultural platforms as well. And could be a way for different communities to mobilize.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my dream of this thing ultimately. Not just that we can get it working, but that it can empower people, and particularly people who may be disadvantaged. And we talked about how huge this country is, and how people are sort of scattered across it between the major population hubs. To enable those people to really participate in a Canada, I think this could be a significant contribution to truly democratizing this country. The two thorns, I suppose. One is, will people share data, which we've discussed.
Right.
Also, access to internet and access to broadband, because while it is literally miraculous what it can enable, there are still a vast part of our population out there who do not have proper access to these resources.
Right.
And the government has to make that a priority. The federal government, they have to make that a priority.
I do see that a lot, the thorn part that you're saying. Both of them I've experienced personally, like exchange of data, like even on a same project of a building, different consultants don't want to share data. So you're talking about a larger scheme of affairs. I get that. And yeah, what you said, that people don't have access to internet, internet is another thing. A friend of mine just drove from Ontario to Alberta. He and his wife, they were at a gas station and they had to get their tank filled. They had to wait for 1 hour just because the power wasn't there. And I was shocked to hear about it, because I've never heard of, I've heard an occasional power cut here and there and a power outage here and there. But at a gas station when you need it and you don't have it, and people are pretty okay and normal with that, I was shocked to hear about that. So yes, and then I also feel like one hope that I have from a project like this is the people and the agencies who have power to make decisions, development decisions, can actually visually see that this is where the money needs to go. Like right now, I feel that this is our revenue generating hub. All the money is being spent here to generate the infrastructure, and whereas the rural or some suburban parts do not get that funding. So yeah, it's my hope too that we can see it. But thank you so much for taking out time. I'm glad you did. I'm glad I know about this project, and I'm actually looking at the to get my hands on the app that you guys developed for tracking the economic data between corridors. I want to look at that app.
Okay. We should have it by the end of the summer. So.
Okay, great. I would be looking forward to that. Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much for coming here.
My pleasure.